Hey folks, it's Chris Richards with the Richards Mortgage Group. I am going to just do a quick video on a very common inquiry that I get on my website, just an inquiry, online inquiry, and thank you to everyone who gives the background information that I'm about to share. Nothing confidential on these people, but this particular message that I received is quite typical. Somebody living in one part of the country, looking to move to another part, buy a piece of land, develop that piece of land. What's involved, how much down payment? It's a common question. What are rates? But the reality is there's more fundamental issues first. So let's bring up the inquiry that they did, and then I'll go through it and give a little narrative on what I see as a mortgage broker when information like this comes in, and help you frame and understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So let me bring that up. So let's have a look at what these particular people are doing. I'll just read it. You might be able to see it on your screen, but it says, my wife and I currently live in Smithers, BC. We want to settle down in the Okanagan in the next year or two, raise our family. Our dream is to buy land and build a home on it. We're currently looking in a particular area, Armstrong in this case. I want to know what kind of down payment and how do I get a builder's mortgage. This particular person is, he says, I have a career as a mechanic that I can take anywhere, and my wife is also a nurse. So later in the information here, they describe a little bit more about their employment income. So what's really important, the very first thing that I look at here is the following: unemployment. So when this person moves from Smithers, BC to Armstrong, British Columbia, so that's a pretty decent trek, the employment that that person has in Smithers as a mechanic and his wife as a nurse is now gone. Now, in certain industries, you have remote working possibility, and so anytime we have somebody who says, oh, I can work anywhere, the very first thing I do is get them to confirm that indeed that employment can be transferred. So let's take a little bit more of the income details. Remember, they're in Smithers. So he's an automotive service technician, and his wife is a registered nurse working at a local hospital. So one of the things I want to point out first of all is simply a more fundamental issue on this particular borrower. What you have to understand as you're trying to transition from one part of the country to the other is the moment that you move to the next location, you are now, from a lender's perspective and probably from a real perspective, unemployed. So to get a mortgage, you have to have sufficient income to pay the mortgage payments. It doesn't matter where you're buying, you have to prove that you, for any kind of income-based lending, which is the majority of mortgages, you have to prove that you're employed. So the moment our person here in Smithers wants to go to Armstrong, unless they have a job that they're going to that's non-probationary, they're unemployed. Likewise, the spouse in this particular example is a registered nurse working casually. So in the first place, casual employment, unless you've got a two-year track record, is unusable anyways until you have a 2-year track record. But in this case, is that person going to pick up a nursing position, anything more than casual, in the new location, in this case in Armstrong? So my advice for these people who are trying to transition, there's two options for them. One is simply move the family to Armstrong and establish reliable employment, which means for our one, the mechanic, you need to get employed with regular full-time employment in Armstrong. Likewise, to use the spouse's income as a nurse, you need to get gainful employment with guaranteed hours as a nurse. In this case, I look at their profile and I'll see there's a renter. They're a renter, so they don't have any equity that they can borrow on. The reason I'm bringing up this point is oftentimes somebody's trying to transition from one part of the country to the other while you're still employed. Let's say you're living in Calgary and you're trying to move to say Armstrong in this example. Using your employment credentials in Alberta, while you're still employed, purchase Armstrong as a second home or buy the land while still qualifying to keep your current place where you're living. That's a possibility. So you have to buy the next place while continuing to qualify owning your current place. This assumes you have enough down payment to make the next purchase and that you have sufficient income and stable income to do that. But that's typically how you have to do it. Once you've got all the lending that you need in place in the target location, now you can quit your job in Calgary in this example, or Smithers, quit your job and move to the next place. Now, if you think about it in reality, are you going to quit your job in Calgary and move to unemployment someplace else? While you still have a bunch of payments to make, mortgage payments, etc. The reality is that's exactly the risk that the lenders are preventing. Is you need to have stable income in order to get a mortgage. Now let's just take another look at that and think about risk. So the other alternative for this borrower would be simply quit your jobs and move to Armstrong. So let's imagine that. Quit their jobs, get a vehicle, or take their vehicle, load it up, off they go to Armstrong. Now you arrive in Armstrong, and now what? You start knocking on doors? What are you going to get to rent? Is someone going to rent to you while you're unemployed? So the reality is that it's a real risk when you transition, and employment is extremely critical to getting a mortgage or even putting food on the table. So in this case here, if I was to advise these clients, I would say, listen, who do you know in Armstrong where you can couch surf? Start putting your resume out, get employed in Armstrong, move to Armstrong, stay on a couch, get that employment working, then fetch the family. This is no different than somebody moving from another country and starting up in Canada. You've got to get employment established first. That's your beachhead. Once you've got the employment, bring in the family. Then you have to say, can I qualify for a mortgage? So now you have to meet the regular qualifying rules to get a mortgage. Hope this video was useful. It's just helping people frame what it takes to get a mortgage in a different location. In this case, these people want to buy land and develop it. That's trickier than just buying an existing home. First and foremost, you've got to establish employment, or you have to prove that your employment is ongoing in the new location to get a mortgage. This is Chris Richards with the Richards Mortgage Group. If you'd like to discuss any kind of mortgage planning, I'm happy to help.